prove that Chinese-style horror is the scariest, I put on a red wedding dress and slept in a coffin. Even stuck a large red double happiness symbol on the lid. When other countries saw this, they all mocked me, saying Dragon Nation had a fool. Even our own people showed despair, waiting for the arrival of death. All of this because the eerie world descended. Every nation had to create strange instances and conquer others. The winner could claim part of the loser's national fortune. The defeated would not only see halved crops, but also face destruction if their fortune hit zero. I thought Dragon Nation's deep culture could easily dominate, but due to gaps in our eerie traditions, we ended up with childish escape room-like instances. This led to repeated losses and massive fortune plunder. Meanwhile, Sakura Nation, Pyramid Nation and Beautiful Nation, dominated with Sadako mummies and creepy nuns. Dragon Nation, with its rich history, has terrifying folklore like embroidered shoes and haunted villages. Any one of them could crush the competition. At that moment, a line of blood red text appeared before me. I was still pondering how to join the national instance. Without hesitation I agreed. Soon the news spread worldwide. The system actually chose a teenager as our instance designer? Does this mean our entire think tank is inferior to a kid barely in their teens? Our highest instance completion rate is only 36%. If this kid can improve it by even 1%, we might avoid national destruction. Is Dragon Nation doomed to laughable failure? What kind of instance can a teenager design? Will it be about being chased by their parents? Ha ha ha, Yoshi, this is our chance. Next time we face Dragon Nation, we'll crush them completely. We'll make them kneel and call us daddy. In an instant, nations across the globe erupted in celebration. Even small tribes without electricity wanted a piece of the action. The match results are in. Sakura Nation was paired with Dragon Nation. Oh my god, Sakura Nation is so lucky. In the last national war, Dragon Nation was matched against Sakura Nation. This time, whether by eerie coincidence or fate, the two nations were matched as enemies once again. This sparked an uproar across the entire Blue Star. Countless nations turned green with envy. They were furious and anxious at the thought of Dragon Nation's vast fortune being plundered by Sakura Nation. Meanwhile, Sakura Nation erupted in celebration. This is great. Dragon Nation again? Fantastic. This time we'll make them kneel and call us daddy. Yoshi, Yoshi. I hear Dragon Nation's women are amazing. Let's kill all the men and keep the women to have our children. Dragon Nation, however, fell silent. Sakura Nation's instance success rate was ranked in the top 10 across Blue Star. Dragon Nation suffered a devastating loss last time. Their strategy team was nearly wiped out. On the other hand, Sakura Nation completed Dragon Nation's instance without losing a single member. This allowed them to seize a massive amount of Dragon Nation's fortune. And at this moment, all nations' strategy teams were simultaneously transported into enemy instances. In an instant, the scenes from these instances appeared online worldwide. Inside Dragon Nation's instance was a traditional Chinese mansion hosting a wedding. Red lanterns hung high. Guests urged each other to drink. 10 members of Sakura Nation's strategy team suddenly appeared at the mansion's entrance. At the same time, a line of blood red text appeared for all to see. Upon seeing the completion conditions, Sakura Nation's team burst into laughter. Attend the wedding? It seems Dragon Nation's instance is nothing special this time either. There's no danger at all. Inoue-kun, don't get careless. This time Dragon Nation changed designers. We'd better stay cautious. Yoshi, let's stick to the plan and split into two teams. One team will explore other areas of the instance to find an exit. The other team will stay here to study what this so-called wedding is all about. At almost the same time, everyone globally watching Dragon Nation's instance was left confused. Is this Dragon Nation's new design? Why does it look not only harmless, but even joyful? In eerie instance design, fear levels are usually tied to the design. The more fear participants feel, the stronger and scarier the eerie elements become. Thus, instance designers worldwide always focus on creating a terrifying atmosphere. They start with gloomy, eerie weather and oppressive or even nauseating environments. Some even smear blood everywhere, just to disgust and terrify participants. But Chinese-style horror is different. It's subtle and ordinary. Sometimes it's everyday or even celebratory scenes. Yet this subtly captures the essence of Chinese horror. At this moment, I was grinning sinisterly at Sakura Nation's team. I couldn't wait to see their expressions later. In Dragon Nation's high-level meeting room, every think tank member was dumbfounded. They usually rack their brains, trying to design instances scarier than other nations. But their limited cultural history meant they couldn't think of anything truly frightening. So most of their designs were modern, like serial killer cases and similar themes. Those things exist in other nations too. For example, Western 8 nations excel in such movies, and their instance designs far surpass Dragon Nations. Because of this, Western 8 Nations netizens often mock Dragon Nations netizens online. Could it be based on ancient punishments? As far as I know, some Dragon Nation punishments are truly terrifying, like flaying or sandalwood punishment. Actually, you're right. I think I just got an idea. At the same time, Sakura Nation's 10-person team split into two groups. One group explored the instance's environment. It was a remote village, surrounded by mountains with no way out, except for a single bridge leading to the outside. But when they stepped onto the bridge, they encountered an invisible wall. It seemed to mark the boundary of the instance. Same as other instances, nothing special. Inoue smirked dismissively. So far his fear level remained at 0. I must admit, Dragon Nation's instance has pretty nice scenery. A little bridge flowing streams distant mountains. If I get the chance, I'd love to vacation here someday. Don't worry, if Dragon Nation keeps this up, Sakura Nation will conquer them soon enough. Then we'll have all the chances we want to visit. The team continued exploring the village. But strangely, the entire village seemed deserted. Every house was locked. Considering that breaking in might trigger forced elimination, they didn't dare enter. Eventually, driven by the approaching night, they returned to the starting point of the instance. At that moment, an eerie red glow engulfed the entire Yang family courtyard. The lively atmosphere was gone, replaced by silence. Instantly, the fear levels of 5 team members began to rise. Do you guys notice something? This village has no lights. At that moment, a woman suddenly pointed to the surrounding village. The Yang family home, located on high ground, overlooked the entire village. But now the entire mountain village was pitch black. Not even a single dog barked. Simultaneously, people across Blue Star felt both fear and curiosity. Even though they were watching through screens, they felt as if they were right there. And the mystery of Dragon Nation's new designer sparked even more curiosity. What kind of magic did this designer use? Despite no overt atmosphere, and even cheerful elements like celebrations, shift from day to night made the mood terrifying. Don't overthink it. Probably a lack of resources during design, so they didn't bother creating NPCs for the village. Inoue, experienced as ever, shared his thoughts. Every instance has limited design resources. If stronger monsters are designed, then other scenes and NPCs must be reduced. It's a trade-off that can't be avoided. So Daizune, it seems those empty villages during the day weren't abandoned after all. The group failed to notice that subconsciously, they were talking to ease the tension. But instead of lowering their fear levels, their fears steadily increased. Wait, where are all the people? I remember there were many during the day. Suddenly a girl voiced her concern. Her words immediately caused everyone's fear to spike slightly. Megumi-chan, don't talk so casually. Scaring each other will only worsen things. I'm starting to think you're a Dragon Nation spy. The other Sakura Nation members scolded her immediately. In truth, they were scared. For some reason, they felt the red gate before them looked like the gaping maw of a monster, silently waiting for them to enter. Don't overthink it. The system tasked us to attend the Yang family wedding and survive until dawn. That means we have no choice but to go inside. Inoue took the lead and entered. Suddenly Megumi let out a piercing scream. The other Sakura Nation members felt chills run down their spines. Inside the courtyard, there were no guests attending the wedding. At each table sat what were clearly paper effigies. The effigies' faces had 2 patches of red blush and pairs of lifeless eyes that exuded a chilling aura. This is outrageous. Suddenly Inoue became furious. Just to save resources, they couldn't even bother designing people? They just used paper effigies instead? Is this the professionalism of Dragon Nation designers? His voice echoed loudly as if venting his frustration. However, anyone observant could see that he was using anger to mask his inner unease and fear. Inoue suddenly rushed forward and tore one of the paper effigies to shreds. Then he proceeded to destroy them all. Inoue-kun, this might not be a good idea. What if tearing them triggers a trap? Megumi asked nervously. Baka, what kind of trap could there be? I mean, look at this pile of paper dolls. What trap could they possibly trigger? Inoue shouted angrily, clearly losing his composure. He stomped on one of the paper effigies' faces, smashing the eerie blushing smile into bits. Calm down, Inoue-kun. This isn't good. You should know that the eerie elements in instances feed on fear. A man warned with concern. Fine, I'll calm down. Inoue exhaled deeply, realizing his outburst. Could this be that Dragon Nation kid's strategy? To provoke our anger and raise our fear levels? Then we'd fail the instance. Man speculated out loud. If it gets too scary and fear reaches 100, participants could instantly succumb. That's why some nations' instances are designed with sudden jump scares. They deliberately spike fear levels. No matter what's thrown at us, bring it on. It's just a Dragon Nation instance. Inoue strode toward the house. After exploring the entire courtyard and finding no trace of their teammates, They concluded the other team must be inside the house. Sure enough, they found the other team in the main hall. However, the team members looked visibly shaken. Did you find a way out? Inoue shook his head. No, this instance is terribly designed. You can't even enter any villagers' homes. Seems like they didn't bother designing them. By the way, what about your exploration findings? It was at this moment that they finally noticed the situation in the main hall. There were 2 coffins placed inside. The sight of them added an eerie touch. Though coffins often appear in eerie instances, strategy teams regularly undergo desensitization training, like sleeping in coffins to prepare. Naturally, they felt no fear. However, coffins, symbols of death, appearing at a wedding, was deeply unsettling. This illogical and contradictory detail planted seeds of unease in their hearts. We checked them. The coffins are nailed shut. Without tools they can't be opened. But our goal is to survive until dawn. Opening the coffins doesn't matter. In fact, opening them might trigger a deadly trap. So it's best not to open them at all. Yoshi, that makes sense. Inoue and his group joined the other team, which eased much of their fear and unease. After a while, Agumi suddenly seemed to realize something and said, if coffins hold the dead, and this is a wedding, could this wedding actually be for the 2 corpses inside? As her words fell, it was as if she had triggered some eerie mechanism. A gust of wind blew, extinguishing all the red candles in the main hall. Why did the lights suddenly go out? Was it triggered by what she just said? I knew an eerie instance couldn't be this simple. Now the truly terrifying part begins. Those who had mocked Dragon Nation's instance earlier were now completely silent. They swallowed, nervously fixating on the screen. Meanwhile, in Dragon Nation, the think tank's eyes lit up. A wedding with coffins. One symbolizes ultimate joy, the other ultimate sorrow. What a brilliant idea. Why didn't I think of this before? At that moment the instance changed again. The sound of fingernails scratching wood suddenly echoed through the silent darkness. This is bad. Danger ahead. Let's get out of here quickly. Inoue shouted the order. All the Sakura Nation team members ran out of the hall. They had absolute confidence in their physical abilities. Even vampires would struggle to match their speed. Even if a monster caught up, they would sacrifice 1 or 2 members at most. Sacrificing a few could ensure the team's safety. It would be worth it. This time, however, they were lucky. To their surprise, not a single member was harmed. Just as they were celebrating their fortune, their smiles froze. At the Yang family's old mansion gate, the once joyful red lanterns had turned a ghastly white. The air felt as if it had instantly chilled. White funeral money drifted down like snowflakes, creating an eerie scene. Almost simultaneously, Inoue suddenly slapped his forehead and voiced his guess. I get it. We've been in an illusion this whole time. In other words, the red wedding and paper effigies we saw were all fake. This is the real scenario now. Agumi repeated his conclusion in her own words. No wonder it felt strange. It was just an illusion. Dragon Nation's designer isn't impressive. This isn't scary at all. I actually think the white looks cleaner. The Sakura Nation members exchanged comments, secretly letting out a sigh of relief. Let's go. Let's head back inside. I want to see what tricks are next. Inoue was about to re-enter the Yang family mansion when Megumi grabbed him. Wait, don't you notice something? We're missing someone. At that moment everyone broke into a cold sweat. Their fear levels spiked instantly. They quickly did a head count and realized someone was indeed missing. Out of the original 10, only 9 remained. Baka Yuru. There must be a monster here. It silently killed one of our teammates. Wait, no. They didn't make it out when we escaped. Our teammate is still trapped inside. Check the system panel. They're still alive. Quick, get back in there. We have to rescue them. The group rushed back into the Yang family mansion. But this time, they were greeted by a terrifying sight. Torn, mangled bodies lay in pools of blood. The banquet tables had turned into a grisly slaughterhouse. Horrible. So there were living people here? These must be the missing villagers. They were all killed by the monster. Something's not right. Inoue shakily walked forward, a horrifying thought forming in his mind. And he saw a trampled, mangled head on the floor. His fear level skyrocketed. These were the paper effigies he had torn apart. But now they were human remains. The crushed face on the ground was identical to the paper doll he had stomped on, even in the same position. Which meant Inoue had killed them. He was the murderer. A cold wind swept through the room. Inoue smelled blood coming from his own body. Looking down, he saw himself drenched in blood and brain matter. Pieces of severed fingers clung to his clothes. Inoue's fear level peaked instantly. Blood poured from all 7 orifices as he collapsed to the ground. In that moment all his teammates and the spectators watching the instance saw a blood-red message appear before them. Eliminated. Eliminated so quickly? When did Dragon Nation's instance become this terrifying? There wasn't even a monster. Just fear itself. It scared an experienced strategist to death. This is absurdly horrifying. It's not just Inoue. Even his teammates broke out in goosebumps when they learned the truth. What they saw in the illusion, the so-called shoddy paper effigies, were actually living people. They were real villagers, living breathing humans, and they were happily enjoying a wedding feast, full of joy and laughter. But they barged in, driven by anger and fear, and tore the villagers apart. It was as if the instance was saying, they were the real monsters here. The dread and discomfort of this realization was more nauseating than being drenched in blood, or surrounded by corpses. Inoue-kun. Megumi stared at Inoue-kanmei, blood streaming from his orifices. She couldn't believe this was once her teammate, who used to joke and laugh with her. His fear level must have maxed out, causing instant elimination. We need to control our emotions better. Remember, in eerie instances, the more afraid we are, the stronger the eerie forces become. And now one of us is gone. This has greatly amplified the eerie presence in the instance, making it much harder to clear. Inoue-kun, rest in peace. I'll carry your will and survive for you. Megumi wiped the blood from Inoue-kanmei's face with a handkerchief, and gently closed his eyes. Let's go. We still have a missing teammate. He couldn't have left the mansion. He must still be here somewhere. Kamita Ichiro had now taken over as the team's leader. It's protocol. We have to maximize our survival chances. When the captain is eliminated, the vice captain takes over. The rest of the team raised no objections, and followed closely behind him. However, when they returned to the main hall, the sight before them left them speechless. The two coffins had disappeared. In their place stood a woman in a bridal crown and red robes, and a man wearing a large red flower on his chest. The two sat solemnly in front of a large white she character. Waita-kun, weren't you the one missing? What are you doing here? Megumi suddenly noticed that the man wearing the red flower was their missing teammate. However, his face was ghastly pale. His lips were dry, and he looked like a corpse. Where were you? After the lights went out, I was left inside. You were gone. His fragmented words revealed the truth. After the lights went out, Waita was instantly teleported into a coffin. He scratched desperately at the coffin lid, but no one knew he was inside. He could only despair as he heard their footsteps walking away from him, leaving him alone in the dark and terrifying space. As his story concluded, blood poured from all 7 of his orifices. Suddenly, Megumi screamed again. In such a short time, another teammate had been eliminated. The most disturbing thing was how it happened. Calm down, Megumi-chan. The more scared you are, the stronger the eerie force becomes. Kamita said, his face pale as a sheet. He had realized something was wrong. The eerie force had clearly grown stronger. At the start, it could only kill using illusions. But after Inoue's elimination, it had directly eliminated Waita. Even if Waita was scared to death, he had been alive just moments ago. Seeing the team appear should have made him happy. But suddenly, at the very moment he should have felt safe, he was eliminated. This shows that wasn't fear that killed him. It was the eerie force that directly took his life. Just then, someone pointed to the bride and asked, "Who is she? She wasn't here before, was she?" As one of the only 2 red accents in the white backdrop, the bride stood out conspicuously. At that moment, everyone's fear levels spiked once again. "Konnichiwa. Excuse me, are you from here?" Megumi bravely greeted the bride. The bride's pale hands resting on her lap suggested she might be alive. However, after what felt like forever, bride gave no response. Damn it, do you all remember that there were 2 coffins in this room in the illusion? Isn't it possible that this eerie wedding is actually for 2 corpses? This would explain why everything turned white so suddenly. Kamita shared his speculation. A wedding for the dead. It sounds poetic when you say it. But why does it feel so terrifying? Upon hearing Kamita's theory, viewers outside the instance felt chills run down their spines. Inside the Yang family mansion, Megumi complained in a trembling voice. "Kamita-kun, please stop talking. You're scaring all of us." As Kamita finished speaking, the flickering white candles made the hall even more eerie. The dim lights seemed to grow darker. Suddenly, a strange laugh escaped the bride's lips. This caused everyone present to scream reflexively. But the Sakura Nation team members immediately assumed defensive stances, thanks to their professional training. So the bride is the monster after all. If we kill her, we can clear the instance. Kamita drew the dagger from his waist, lunged at the bride. At that moment, everyone held their breath. No one knew what would happen next. The unknown is the most terrifying. If this were a beautiful nation instance, it would undoubtedly involve gore and blood. In those instances, the eerie forces manifest as tangible viruses or monsters. But in Dragon Nation's instance, the eeriness is far stranger. It's like an insidious poison, seeping in from unknown places, in unpredictable ways. This unsettling feeling kept everyone on edge. Over time, the strain could break anyone's mind. With a sharp sound, the bride was torn apart. To their shock, the bride turned out to be a paper effigy. Seeing this, everyone was stunned. Kamita stood frozen in place, bewildered. He looked like a guilty child, staring blankly at the dagger in his hand. No, this isn't right. I clearly saw the bride's hands were human. Even though they were pale, they were definitely human hands. It couldn't be made of paper. Megumi's face turned ashen, her lips trembling. Her mental state seemed on the verge of collapse. Please don't tell me. This paper effigy was another living person? Did we kill another human? A Sakura Nation team member stammered, his voice trembling. At that moment the oppressive eerie atmosphere weighed heavily on everyone's hearts. Everyone's fear levels skyrocketed.